I never expected her to remember my name, let alone notice when I stopped coming by. It wasn't anything special, just Hamza's house. Same metal gate that complained every time you pushed it open. Same uneven courtyard tiles that collected dust no matter how often someone washed them. Same faint smell of detergent and cardamom drifting from inside. I've been going there since first semester. Study sessions, late cricket matches on TV, borrowed chargers, unfinished assignments. Ordinary things. And his mother, Aisha Ani. Back then, she was just part of the background. Someone moving between rooms with folded laundry on her arm, reminding us to eat, asking if our exams were close. The kind of warmth you don't question because it isn't meant for you specifically. At least, that's what I thought. The night everything began wasn't dramatic. Nodan Sturm. Noken Fischen. Just a torn shirt. I had caught it on a hostel cupboard hinge, ripping the sleeve almost clean off. Hamza laughed when he saw it and said, "Emmy can fix anything. Bring it tomorrow." So I did. She sat at a small table near the window, her sewing machine already humming before I finished explaining. Yellow light fell across her hands, steady, practiced hands, guiding fabric under the needle like she was calming something restless. "You boys don't look after your clothes," she said without looking up. I shrugged. "We barely look after ourselves." She smiled at that. Not loudly, just a small curve of her mouth. I remember noticing how quiet the house felt that evening. Hamza had gone out. His younger sister was at tuition. The television stayed off. Only the machine filled the room, rhythmic, patient. I stood there longer than necessary, pretending to check my phone. No new messages. Just old chats I never deleted, but never opened either. She noticed. "You can sit," she said gently. "You look tired." "You said." She poured tea without asking how I liked it. Somehow it was exactly right, not too sweet. I folded the napkin beside the cup over and over while she worked, watching threads gather at her fingertips. "You don't go home often?" she asked. "Hostel's closer to university." That wasn't my question. I didn't answer. I just watched steam rise from the tea until it disappeared. She didn't push. That was the strange part. Most adults filled silence with advice. She let it stay, like silence itself was allowed to breathe. When she finished, she held the shirt up toward the light, checking the seam carefully. "There," she said, stronger than before. I laughed softly. Wish people worked like that. Her eyes lifted then, really lifted, meeting mine fully for the first time. For a second, neither of us looked away. Not inappropriate, not romantic, just aware. She handed me the shirt, but her fingers lingered a moment longer than necessary. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe she did too. She cleared her throat and stepped back, suddenly busy arranging thread spools that were already neat. "You boys study too much," she said. "You forget to live." I didn't know what to say to that, so I nodded like she had given instructions instead of something heavier. I left soon after. Life continued. Classes, assignments, late hostel dinners eaten alone while scrolling through conversations I never started. Sometimes I typed messages and erased them before sending. Sometimes I opened Hamza's chat just to see if he'd invite me over again. Weeks passed. I stopped visiting without realizing why. Then one night, close to midnight, my phone buzzed while I was lying awake staring at the ceiling fan. An unknown message. "Beta, you left something here." I frowned. Another message appeared before I could reply. "And the house feels strangely quiet without you." I stared at the message longer than I should have. "You left something here." I checked my bag automatically, half expecting to find whatever she meant missing. Notebook, charger, wallet, everything was there. I typed, "What did I forget?" Then erased it twice before sending. Her reply came almost immediately. "Your hoodie, the gray one." I exhaled. I barely remembered leaving it. Probably one of those evenings after studying when I stayed too late without noticing time slipping away. Then another message. "Come tomorrow. I'll make tea." It wasn't unusual. Not really. I had been invited hundreds of times before. Still, I didn't sleep much that night. The next evening, the metal gate sounded louder than usual when I pushed it open. The courtyard was empty. A soft yellow light spilled from the sitting room window. She opened the door before I knocked. "You came," she said, almost relieved, then quickly stepped aside as if correcting herself. "I mean your hoodie." She handed it to me, neatly folded. It smelled faintly of detergent and something warmer I couldn't name. I should have left. Instead, I sat. The sewing machine rested silent today. Fabric pieces lay arranged beside it, half-finished dresses waiting patiently. She poured tea, placing the cup in front of me with the same quiet certainty as before. "You've been busy?" she asked. "Classes. Exams coming." She nodded, but her eyes lingered on my face longer than the question required. "You look thinner." I laughed awkwardly. "Hostile food." She shook her head slightly. "No, that's not it." I didn't ask how she knew, for while we just drank tea, the clock ticked loudly on the wall. Somewhere outside, a motorcycle passed and faded into distance. Ordinary sounds, but the silence between us felt heavier now, like both of us were aware of something standing quietly in the room. "My husband moved out last year," she said suddenly. The words landed gently, but changed the air completely. I looked up. She kept her gaze on her cup. "People still ask where he is. I say work. It's easier." I didn't know what response belonged to a son's friend. Sympathy felt too formal. Silence felt safer. "I'm sorry," I said finally. She smiled faintly. "Don't be. Sometimes loneliness is quieter than fighting." Her fingers traced the rim of her cup. I noticed how careful she was with everything. Movements measured, voice soft, emotions folded away like clean clothes. I thought about my own room at the hostel. The unmade bed. The way I kept videos playing just so the silence wouldn't feel personal. "I don't really talk to anyone either," I admitted before I could stop myself. "Not properly." She glanced at me then, not surprised, just understanding. "Hamza says you're always joking," she said. "Joking is easier." She laughed softly at that, and something eased between us. We moved to the small table where she was cutting fabric. I held one side while she measured. Our shoulders almost touched. Neither of us shifted away. I became aware of everything. The sound of scissors, the warmth of the room, the way she occasionally brushed loose hair behind her ear when concentrating. This is normal, I told myself. This is just kindness. But another thought followed quietly behind it. Then why does it feel different? I imagined Hamza walking in suddenly. Imagined explaining why I kept coming over when he wasn't home. Imagined how easily something innocent could look wrong. The thought made me sit straighter. She noticed. "You're thinking too much," she said. "I do that. I know." When she finished measuring, she reached past me to grab a pin cushion. Her hand brushed mine. Light, accidental. Neither of us moved immediately. She didn't apologize. I didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled small, tired, warm. And I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. After that evening, I started noticing time differently. Lectures felt longer. Evenings felt unfinished. I caught myself checking my phone around the same hour every night. Not waiting exactly, just aware. She didn't message again for 3 days, which was normal, and somehow not normal at all. Hamza finally cornered me outside the university cafeteria. "Where have you disappeared to?" he asked, bumping my shoulder. "Emmy asked about you." I tried to sound casual. "Just busy." He grinned. "She says you study more than me now. That's embarrassing." I laughed, but something tightened in my chest. Hearing her mention me, through him, felt strange. Like two separate worlds brushing against each other. That evening, I went over again. I told myself I was visiting my friend. Hamza wasn't home. Of course. She went to buy groceries, his sister said before leaving for tuition. "You can wait." So I did. The house felt different when she wasn't there. Too quiet. Like the warmth had stepped out with her. I wandered toward the sewing room without thinking. Threads, folded fabrics, her glasses resting on the table. A half-finished dress draped over the chair. Set. Minutes later, the gate screeched outside. Her footsteps entered quickly, slightly hurried. "Oh," she said when she saw me. "Genuine surprise." Then something softer. "You didn't tell me you were coming." I was nearby. A weak excuse. She didn't question it. She set grocery bags down and pushed loose hair away from her face. A faint line of tiredness crossed her eyes. "You shouldn't come when Hamza isn't home," she said quietly. The words weren't sharp. Just careful. I nodded immediately. I know, but neither of us moved toward the door. Instead, she began unpacking vegetables, and I helped without being asked. Passing tomatoes, washing coriander, small domestic movements that felt strangely intimate. Our hands kept almost meeting. Almost. You have friends at university, she said after a while. Yeah, you should spend time with them. I understood what she meant, or maybe what she was trying not to mean. I like coming here, I said before I could filter it. She paused, holding a knife mid-air, not looking at me. That's the problem, she murmured. Silence stretched. The ceiling fan hummed loudly. Somewhere outside, children laughed in the street. Normal life continuing without noticing the weight inside that kitchen. She turned toward me finally. You're young, she said. You don't understand how people talk. I'm not thinking about people. Her eyes lifted sharply at that. For a second, something unguarded flickered there. Relief, fear, maybe both. That's exactly why I have to, she replied. I didn't know how to answer. My thoughts tangled. Am I imagining this? Does she feel it too? Why doesn't she just tell me to leave? Instead, I reached for a bowl at the same moment she did. Our hands met fully this time. Warm. Still. Neither of us pulled away. Her breath slowed. Mine forgot its rhythm. The room felt smaller, quieter, like sound itself had stepped back. She looked at me. Not like Hamza's mother. Not like an adult correcting a boy. Just a woman looking at someone who understood her loneliness. I leaned slightly closer without deciding to. She didn't step back. Her eyes dropped briefly to my lips, then rose again. A second longer, and the gate outside slammed open. Voices. Hamza laughing loudly as he walked in. She stepped away instantly, turning toward the sink, hands suddenly busy with nothing. I stood frozen, heart pounding for a reason I couldn't explain aloud. We hadn't done anything. Not really, but it felt like we almost had. And, somehow, that felt harder to forget than if we actually had crossed the line. After that night, something changed in the way we behaved around each other. Not openly. If anything, we became more careful. I started visiting only when Hamza was home. She spoke to me the same way she always had, asking about classes, reminding us to eat, scolding Hamza for leaving cups everywhere. Perfectly normal, except we almost never looked at each other directly anymore. And that somehow said everything. A week later, Hamza mentioned casually, Emmy goes for evening walks now. Doctor told her to. I nodded like it meant nothing. That same evening, while returning from university, I saw her near the small park 2 streets away. She sat alone on a bench, shawl wrapped loosely around her shoulders, watching children play cricket under fading sunlight. She noticed me immediately. Of course she did. You follow people now? She asked, a faint smile hiding nervousness. I was passing by. I sat at the far edge of the bench, leaving space between us. Too much space. It felt deliberate. For a while, we watched the game in silence. A boy shouted when he hit the ball too far. Someone argued about rules. Ordinary noise, filling an uncomfortable quiet. You stopped coming, she said finally. I thought maybe I should. She nodded slowly. That's good. But her voice didn't sound convinced. The wind lifted a corner of her shawl. Instinctively, I reached to adjust it, then stopped halfway, my hand hovering awkwardly before retreating to my lap. She noticed that too. You don't have to be afraid of me, she said softly. I'm not. Then why do you look like you're about to apologize every time you see me? I didn't answer immediately. Words felt dangerous lately, like stepping on thin ice. Because the truth was simple. I missed her. Not the house. Not the tea. Her. I don't want to make things difficult for you, I said quietly. She let out a small breath, almost a laugh, almost sadness. Things were already difficult, she said. You just noticed late. The sky turned orange behind the trees. Children began leaving the park one by one, their noise fading until only distant traffic remained. She looked tired in that light. Not older, just honest. Like someone who had spent years holding herself together for everyone else. My life became very small after she stopped, searching for the right ending to that sentence. After everything changed, I waited. You coming over, she continued. It made the house feel alive again. The confession landed gently, but carried weight. I swallowed. I didn't know it meant that much. That's the problem, she said, smiling faintly. You don't realize what you do to people. Her hand rested on the bench between us, close enough that our fingers almost touched. I felt a strange tightening in my chest, fear, guilt, something warmer underneath. What are we doing? I asked before I could stop myself. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked straight ahead, eyes following nothing in particular. I asked myself that every night, she admitted. The honesty felt exposed. Fragile. My heart pounded louder than the passing cars. I turned slightly toward her. The distance between us suddenly felt unbearable. If things were different, I started. She closed her eyes briefly, as if bracing herself. Don't, she whispered, but she didn't move away. The evening air grew still. Her breath trembled just enough to notice. Mine matched it without permission. I could feel the moment stretching, fragile, irreversible. One step closer and everything would change. I turned toward her fully. She finally met my eyes. And in that silence, without touching, without speaking, one question hung between us. If we already crossed the line in our hearts, what was left to protect? After the park, I thought something would change between us. Not dramatically, just honestly. Maybe we would finally talk about it. Maybe she would tell me to stay away. Maybe I would stop pretending I didn't understand what lived in the spaces between our words. Instead, she disappeared. Not completely, just enough to feel intentional. The next time I went to Hamza's house, she greeted me politely, the same warm tone she used with neighbors and relatives. Hey, she asked from the doorway. No lingering eye contact. No quiet pauses. Just courtesy. I told myself I was imagining the distance. But she stayed busy the entire evening, moving from kitchen to laundry to phone calls that lasted longer than necessary. When I tried to help, she gently redirected me back to the living room. You boys talk, she said. I have work. Her voice was kind, careful, closed. I watched her from across the room without meaning to. Every movement felt measured now, like she had built invisible walls overnight. Hamza noticed before I did. You two fight or something, he joked, glancing between us. My stomach tightened. What? No, he laughed. Emmy used to sit with us all the time. Now she vanishes whenever you come. I forced a smile, but his words stayed with me long after I left. Days passed. No messages. No evening walks. I told myself to stop thinking about her. Focus on assignments. Friends. Normal life. But loneliness has habits. Mine kept leading me back to her street without planning to. One afternoon, I saw a suitcase near their doorway. Not packed for travel, just standing there like a decision waiting to be made. I didn't ask Hamza directly. I didn't want the answer to sound ordinary. He mentioned it casually later. Kala from Lahore wants Amy to stay with her for a while, he said. Says she shouldn't live alone so much. Alone. The word lingered. She might go. I asked. Yeah. Maybe permanently. Depends. He shrugged, already distracted by his phone. Something inside me shifted uneasily. That evening I walked past the house again. Lights were on, curtains drawn. I imagined her inside, folding clothes, preparing to leave pieces of her life behind quietly. I almost knocked. Almost. Instead, I stood across the street, pretending to check messages. My phone screen reflected my own hesitation back at me. What would I even say? Stay. Don't go. For me. The thought felt selfish the moment it formed. Later that night, I opened our chat. Typed. Are you leaving? Deleted it. Typed again. Did I do something wrong? Deleted that too. The cursor blinked patiently, waiting for courage I didn't have. Then, unexpectedly, her profile picture disappeared. No status. No last seen. Just silence. I stared at the empty chat for a long time. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused, like life had started a sentence between us and then simply forgot to finish it. Outside my hostel window, students laughed somewhere down the corridor. Someone played music too loudly. Normal life continued without noticing anything missing. I locked my phone and placed it beside me. The message remained unsent. And that night, for the first time, I didn't walk past her house. The street kept its lights on anyway. I didn't plan to see her again. That's why I told myself, Weeks passed. Exams ended. Hostel rooms emptied for break. Life moved forward in practical ways. Laundry, train tickets, conversations about internships, but something stayed unfinished inside me, like a room I kept forgetting to close. Then Hamza called one evening. "Bro, can you come over?" he asked. "Emmy came back today. I have to go pick someone from the station. Just sit with her for a bit." My chest tightened before I could answer. "Yeah," I said. The gate sounded the same. The courtyard looked unchanged. But walking inside felt different, like returning to a place after admitting you missed it. She stood in the kitchen when I entered, unpacking groceries slowly. For a moment, she didn't notice me. Then she turned and froze. Neither of us spoke. "You came," she said finally. "Hamza called." A small nod. Practical. Safe. She looked thinner. Not fragile, just quieter somehow. As if time away had rearranged something inside her. "I made tea," she said automatically, already reaching for cups. Of course she did. We stood side by side at the counter. The familiar closeness returned instantly, unsettling in how natural it felt. The kettle hummed. Steam filled the small kitchen. I realized how much I had missed ordinary things. The sound of spoons touching glass, her careful movements, the silence that never felt empty with her. "You went to Lahore," I said. "Yes." "Are you staying there?" She hesitated. That hesitation said more than any answer. "I thought leaving would make things simpler," she admitted. "For you. For me." I swallowed. "Did it?" She shook her head slightly. "No." The words settled between us. She placed a cup in front of me, but her hands lingered on the counter instead of pulling away. "I kept thinking," she continued quietly. "Maybe what I felt was loneliness. Maybe I confused kindness with something else." I waited. Her voice softened, but I kept noticing her absence. In small ways. Tea tasted wrong. Even silence felt different. My chest tightened painfully. "I try not coming," I admitted. "I thought that's what you wanted." "I wanted to be responsible," she said. "That doesn't mean I didn't miss you." The honesty landed gently, but completely. Outside, a motorbike passed. The world continued, unaware of how fragile this moment felt. I looked at her, really looked this time. Not as my friend's mother. Not as someone forbidden. Just a woman standing in front of me, scared of wanting something she wasn't supposed to want. "I don't know what this is," I said, "but pretending it's nothing feels worse." Her eyes filled slightly, though she smiled. "You make things complicated," she murmured. "You already said life was complicated before me." A small laugh escaped her, tired, genuine. Silence returned, but it wasn't avoidance anymore. It felt like acceptance. She reached out first. Not dramatic, just her fingers resting lightly over my hand on the counter. Warm, steady, human. No ruse, no urgency, just acknowledgement. "We have to be careful," she said softly. "I know." Another pause. Then she nodded once, almost to herself. "Okay." That was all. No promises. No declarations. Just two people choosing honesty, fully aware of what it might cost, and standing there anyway, sharing tea that had finally stopped growing cold. Time didn't rush us. Nothing changed overnight. No dramatic decisions. No sudden declarations that rewrote our lives. Instead, things shifted quietly, the way seasons do when you only notice them after the air already feels different. I stopped visiting only as Hamza's friend, and she stopped pretending I was just another guest passing through her house. At first, it looked ordinary from the outside. I still came over in the evenings. Sometimes Hamza was there, sometimes not. We talked about exams, news, random things that filled space safely. She moved around the house the same way she always had, preparing tea, folding clothes, adjusting cushions that didn't need adjusting. But small routines began belonging to us. Morning messages appeared occasionally. "Did you eat? Your presentation today, right?" Nothing romantic, just presence. We learned caution together. Doors stayed open. Conversations stayed gentle. Boundaries weren't erased, they were understood. And somehow, that made everything feel more real. Months passed. I graduated. Life pulled me into work, longer hours, adult responsibilities that arrived faster than expected. There were days I didn't visit at all, and strangely, Those absences no longer felt like loss, because we had stopped fearing distance. One evening, after a long day, I found her again at the same park bench. The same one. Children still played cricket nearby. The same uneven grass. The same fading sunlight, turning everything softer than it really was. She smiled when she saw me approaching, not surprised anymore. "You're late," she said. "Work." She shifted slightly, making space beside her without thinking. Set. We didn't rush into conversation. We never needed to. "You drink black coffee now," she said, teasing gently. "Try to look older." I laughed. "You still make tea too sweet." Someone has to balance you. The familiarity felt earned. Not exciting, not forbidden, just steady, peaceful. We talked about ordinary things, a new dress order she received, my difficult manager, Hamza planning to move abroad, life moving forward around us instead of against us. At some point, our hands found each other naturally on the bench. No hositashchen, no fear someone might see, just warmth. "I used to think this was a mistake," she admitted quietly, watching the sky darken. "And now," she thought for a long moment, "I think it was timing, learning patience." That sounded like her. Never dramatic, always honest. We weren't trying to prove anything anymore. We didn't need labels spoken aloud. What existed between us had survived doubt, distance, guilt, and silence. It had become something calmer, something lived in. Later, as we walked back toward the house, the metal gate screeched the same familiar way it always had. Inside, she poured tea while I leaned against the kitchen counter, exactly where everything once almost fell apart. She handed me the cup. Our fingers brushed, but now it wasn't a question. Just habit. Just home. I realized then that love hadn't arrived in a single moment. It had grown through pauses, careful choices, and all the times we almost walked away, but didn't. No grand ending. Just two people who learned how to stay. And sometimes, late at night, when the house grows quiet and the tea cools between us, we exchange a small smile. The kind that says we both remember the night everything almost ended before it ever began. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?